want to make sure, first of all, that everyone knows about our upcoming live conference. If you do enjoy this webinar series, I especially think you'll be interested in and enjoy our Academic Center Summit, which will take place October 14th through 15th near our company's headquarters in Orlando. It will feature professional development sessions similar to this one, along with academia training and informational sessions for current or interested clients. We are very excited also to announce, these were just secured, our keynote speakers. We'll have Michael Frizzell, who's the Director of Student Learning Services at Missouri State and a former ICLCA president, formerly NCLCA, and Corey Hammond, who's the Director of the TRIO program at Southern University Shreveport and author of the book, I Teach, You Learn, We Grow. So registration is now open. We are also taking proposals for breakout sessions until April 30th is the current deadline. So I am going to go ahead and paste in the chat. That is the link to the to learn more about the conference and register. And here's the link to submit a proposal. We'll also, of course, put this in the YouTube description for anybody watching this back later. All right, so welcome to the latest webinar in our Engineerica Education Keynote series. We are very pleased to be bringing you this complimentary presentation. For those of you who are new to us, Engineerica specializes in academic center management systems for higher education. You might be familiar with our software applications, which include AccuTrack, Accudemia, and AccuCampus. And of course, I want to give a special welcome to the Engineerica clients joining us today. And for those of you not yet clients, I do want to let you know we are offering a complimentary trial of our most popular center management system, Accudemia. This gives you the opportunity to use Accudemia for an entire semester risk-free to see if it helps make management of your center and data collection easier. If you're interested, you can send me an email over at rachelc@engineerica.com, and I'm pasting that link in the chat as well. So we started this keynote series for our clients and our contacts who wanted to learn more about best practices and trends in higher education. Each month we feature a distinguished speaker to talk about hot topics in the academic support field. We are still finalizing just the last details for our next webinar, so keep an eye on your emails and on our social media accounts for an announcement about when we open up registration. That should be taking place next week. And a quick introduction to myself, your MC. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm a client success manager with Engineerica. I was previously a learning center manager in a couple of community colleges down here in Florida for 6 years. So like you all, I'm very passionate about higher education and student success. And I also have with me from my team, Nick Armstrong, our senior technical support specialist. He's here as my backup and also to help with any technical issues that might come up on our end, the speaker's end, or yours. And with all that said, I am pleased to introduce you to this month's speaker. Christie Maier grew up outside Denver, Colorado, but now calls Lexington, Kentucky home. Christie holds a BS in Human Development and Family Studies from Colorado State University and an MED in Student Affairs and Higher Education from the University of South Carolina. She currently oversees the administration of Transformative Learning's peer-supported learning services, including the study's peer tutoring program, supplemental instruction, and presentation U, speaking, and writing center. So with all that said, Christie, I am going to go ahead and hand things over to you. Let me go ahead and give you control of the screen here.
So thank you for that great introduction. Again, my name is Christie Maier, and I work at the University of Kentucky in our learning center, which is called Transformative Learning. I use she, her pronouns, and I always like starting off with a land acknowledgement. The purpose of a land acknowledgement is really just to give recognition to where and the lands and the past of the location that we're presenting from. I'm presenting from Lexington, Kentucky, so this is the historic lands of the Cherokee, Osage, Adena, Shawnee, and Hopewell people. I would encourage you all, if you're not sure about the history of the lands that you're joining us from, you can absolutely use this interactive map as a great way to learn a little bit more about the history of where you are. It's a great thing to know and recognize. In our session today, we are going to be going over our group tutoring model that we use the acronym for. So we're going to talk about all of those pieces, what goes into that. We're also going to talk about some collaborative learning strategies, and I'm hoping that you all will be able to identify 1 to 3 of those strategies that you can transfer into your center. And then I'm also hoping that, you know, we'll spend some time at the end to actually make an action plan around what are things that you can take from this and actually put into practice, whatever your center or your responsibilities might be. Those are my goals for the session. So I'm kind of curious to hear from you all. What are you hoping to gain out of the session? If I can tailor or customize something, I want to make sure that this session's meeting what you're hoping it will do. So I'll give you all a second to put in there what you're hoping to gain from the session today. And Rachel, if you see anything pop up in there, you let me know. Give everybody just a minute.
Yep, I'm starting to see some responses. I'm seeing increased ability to facilitate study groups, gain strategies and ideas to use in our group tutoring sessions, any little gem to help me better serve my students, immediately applicable skills or techniques. I'm hoping to gain an understanding of whether group tutoring is more effective than one-on-one tutoring, specific practices tutors can apply in their group sessions. We're just looking into group tutoring, looking for how to start these, optimizing efficiency of group sessions, group tutoring training ideas, always on the lookout for new training ideas, saving money by using groups, hoping to get some ideas for changes we can make to our tutor training, new skills or strategies for training. So we're seeing a lot of training in here. How might we encourage students to join group tutor sessions? Tools to make students successful, best practices, maximum size of a group. I know that's a big debate among people.
Great. Well, that's really, that's a great guide for me to make sure that as we go through, I'm trying to hit on some of those additional topics, but really it sounds like we're all kind of on the same page about what we're going to be talking about today. So just to kind of set the scene, give you a sense of where I'm coming from. So Transformative Learning is the centralized learning center at the University of Kentucky. We have 3 main services and program areas. Academic preparation and placement really is our courses that we offer. It's both for those university, introduction to the university courses, as well as any preparation courses, students that maybe haven't quite met college readiness. Those all live within our department. We also have a very robust coaching program within the department. And I oversee our peer-supported learning services area, which Rachel kind of covered what all is in there. We're fairly large scale since we serve the entire institution. So just to kind of give a bit of a scope of what we're talking about, tutoring and supplemental instruction alone, just last fall, we saw over 13,000 sessions with students, and of those, that's over 2,000 unique students visiting or coming to our services at least once. So as you can tell, lots of students are coming back multiple times to access these services. As I mentioned, we also house our University 101 course in our department, and that serves or has an enrollment of over 3,000 students in the fall. And our coaching program both has group coaching, but also individual coaching, and they saw over 1,400 sessions with students in fall alone. Just wanted to share that to give a bit of a scope of what all we do in Transformative Learning. And of course, if you want to learn more about any of those services, whether it be coaching or our tutoring programs, you can always scan the QR code and kind of go to our website and learn a little bit more about what all we do. We're going to be really focusing on our peer tutoring program, which we call the Studies Peer Tutoring Program. Our model is it's completely free, and we're 100% drop-in. So we do not do any appointments. Students, when tutoring is offered for their course, they can come anytime that a tutor is available. We primarily serve 100 and 200 level math, science, and business courses. So these are some of the largest lecture courses, high enrollment. We're seeing a lot of first year, some second year students that are taking the courses that we support. So that comes along with a lot of behaviors and what are they looking for and what are they bringing into tutoring. Obviously, it's a peer tutoring program, and we focus heavily on group tutoring. When we think about scheduling our tutors and how we make it cost effective, we look at past historic traffic and intentionally schedule with an estimate of 4 students for every 1 tutor that we have on staff at any given time that we're open. So we're anticipating and planning on there being groups of students coming for drop-in tutoring. And most of the students that are coming on a regular basis, they're coming in for homework assistance or to prepare for an exam. When we talk about the service to students, we often say things like, students just come to work on their homework, and if they happen to have a question, a tutor or another student's right there to support them with that. So our messaging around what to expect even includes that group piece of it. Again, our model in training and preparing tutors to do this effectively is a big focus for us. So we're going to talk today about the model and how we train our tutors to do this group tutoring effectively. So we use an acronym to describe it to tutors. It's not intended to be direct steps by any means. This is more a model for them to remember all the pieces that go into being an effective tutor in our center. So just as a quick review, we're going to go in depth with all of these, but the G is for greeting and gathering, R is for restructuring the environment, O is for establishing outcomes, U is for understanding strengths and weaknesses in the group, and P is to emphasize those probing questions that we want tutors to be asking. We're going to go in depth about what are each of those elements and pieces and what do they look like. But before we do that, I'm curious to hear from you all why we would even think about doing a group tutoring model. So I want you all to think about, when do you anticipate or think group tutoring is going to be most effective and why? You can also respond to or think about, what about a collaborative learning environment where students are working together? What about that works well? What are things that groups need in order to make it feel like a collaborative learning space? And I'll give you all a couple minutes to respond to that.
Raul would like to know if you mean for your particular acronym, or I think for group sessions in general.
Great clarifying question, thank you. I'm talking about group tutoring or study groups in general. What about that makes it effective or works well? What needs to happen in order for it to work well?
Okay. Well, yeah, we're getting some responses there. So ESOL conversation practice works well with groups. They correct and encourage each other. It's more fiscally sustainable. Students learn better collaboratively. When you have students in the same class, they can feed off each other to expand thinking. Students need, I like this one a lot, students need to feel comfortable with one another as well as the tutor. The ability to make mistakes and ask quote unquote easy questions when all learners' needs are addressed. English students can bounce ideas off each other freely. Oops, it's going away from me. Let's see. I'm seeing a lot of responses here. Students need the freedom to make mistakes and not receive ridicule. Welcoming environment, having an embedded tutor in the classroom, the group has a common goal, and the group is equally prepared. When the demand for the center exceeds the one-on-one method. Tutors moderates to ensure everyone feels welcome and gets equal attention. Synergy. Group tutoring provides the opportunity for students to collaborate, a common goal in a course or assignment. I've had a couple of people ask for these responses. I will try to put them in a PDF, and I can include them with the rest of the documentation because it does get saved. Part of an SNI or an embedded tutoring model. Students need an instructor that is willing to stand back and let them work through mistakes. Being able to compare and contrast notes. Collaborative success based on trust. A lot of response here, more than I can read out loud. So yes, I will try to put these all in, in a PDF for you.
I love hearing all of that, and yes to all of those responses that you gave. I think when for us, for our center, when we think about the why behind group tutoring, it's really twofold. This idea of efficiency and being cost effective. We can get more done with less funding if there are group sessions happening. We can scale our services more effectively if one tutor can serve many students. And so that's a big piece of why the model is what it is. We also know from learning theories, that students learn well in a group, that there are elements about a study group or being in your peers that allow them to elaborate their thought process, that they can fill in knowledge gaps for one another. It's that low stakes environment where it's okay if I make a mistake or have, air quote, a silly question, because I'm amongst my peers and they can help me learn this material together. So we know from learning theory and from research that those are positive learning environments that we want to create that for our students as well. So it sounds like you all hit on a lot of those reasons. So we're going to spend a little time talking a little more in depth about the model, and I'm going to try to overlay kind of how we go about training tutors in the model and what are things we talk about with our tutors as we go through this model. So the G is our greet and gather. This is the initiation of group tutoring. This is when the tutor is welcoming the student in and they're asking some really low stakes question to just learn a little bit more about what is the student hoping to get out of the session that day. This is one of the most crucial pieces for group tutoring, where the tutor is creating that welcoming environment. They're disarming the student. You know, there's a lot of anxiety that might come along with coming to tutoring. They're the one creating this space where it's okay, you're welcomed here, it's okay to have questions. And they're also utilizing that time to level set expectations around, it's not just one-on-one, you're going to be sitting with a group and they can place and organize students the way that they need to in order to be effective in group tutoring. So I gave some examples of ways this might look on the tutoring floor. And I'm sure they're very similar things to what many of you would see or expect your tutors to be doing, where, you know, they're welcome, thank you so much for coming in, what is your name, what are you working on? But the big thing that we really emphasize for our tutors is, what do you do with that information now? Okay, you found out their name, you got to remember it. If you know what they're working on, intentionally sit them next to somebody that's working on something similar and introduce them to each other. So thanks so much for coming in. Great to meet you, Jimmy. It sounds like you're working on this homework problem. Why don't you sit right over here with Sally and pull up your notes so that we can get started. Bringing them into the center and inviting them into the group session and introducing them, or specifically putting them next to someone, really starts making them feel comfortable in the space, and kind of it gives that expectation of, this is how we're going to work. It's normal and natural that you're going to be working with other students in your course. Restructuring the environment can be both the physical environment and the people in the group as well. So, you know, as groups grow or get smaller, you know, students are coming in, coming out based on what questions they have, what they're working on. Tutors are expected to, you know, move tables around, move chairs around, get the whiteboard where everybody can see it. And they're also expected to intentionally prompt students to work together. It really is an intentional way to ensure students meet each other and understand, I'm going to be working not just me and the tutor, but me and multiple other students. And this can be accomplished through a variety of different ways, lots of nonverbals, but things that tutors can literally say around getting them involved is, you know, this group over here is working on this homework problem, and this group is working on preparing for the exam. What would you like to start with? Okay, I'm going to have you come sit with this group then. It's really that opportunity to get them organized as quickly as possible and ensuring everybody has what they need in order to engage with the session. Establishing outcomes is the way that we want tutors to clearly identify a roadmap for the session and allow students to feel like, what motivated me to come into tutoring, I see that we're going to actually accomplish that. It creates that buy-in from the whole group around why might we start with this problem, but eventually I see that because we're going to eventually get to the thing that I have a question around too. And it kind of gives that transparency of where are we going. So when we see this on the ground with students trickling in for homework and coming and going, we really encourage the tutors to say things like, you know, welcome, thanks so much for coming in. We are working on homework problem 3. Go ahead and pull that up. Let's start here. Or we're working on this concept. Where do you all want to start? Let's make a list of the concepts that are going to be on your upcoming exam, and we'll star our top 3 so that we can make sure that we get through some practice problems around those priorities. You know, the tutor is really the one facilitating, leading it, but trying to create that buy-in from students as well. The U for understanding strengths and weaknesses. This is where the tutor really needs to be perceptive about what's going on in the group dynamic, and being able to identify both individual knowledge gaps as well as a collective group knowledge. Are we all kind of lost on this concept? And figuring out who maybe might have some mastery of a certain concept that they can leverage and use to support the rest of the group. This does not always have to take the form of, you know, hey, Jimmy, I know you're really strong at this. Can you teach, or can you work with the person sitting right next to you? But utilizing the knowledge that the collective group has to share with others. So even a simple thing like, that's a great question. Who else might know the answer to that? Can anybody else help with or tell me the next step to this problem? Really putting it on the group that you all do have some collective knowledge and can share it with one another. Now, it absolutely can also take the form of, oh, we just finished this problem and I know you did really well. Could you run us through what were those steps? Remind the whole group of what we did. And being able to identify those students that are picking up on things, or maybe have some mastery of a concept that they just did, and how can you use that? How can the tutor use that to help the rest of the group? This also allows the tutor some freedom and some flexibility to move around and maybe scaffold in other areas. If they can get an individual in the group that's really strong and can take a leadership role, then they can maybe float around and scaffold others that need a little more support. And finally, the P is around probing questions. Any tutoring center, any academic support is going, like, we love questions. This is one of the primary scaffolding tools we use in tutoring sessions. And so utilizing the Socratic method to guide students to discovery of their own answers and how to solve problems, as well as utilizing redirecting questions and clarifying questions so that the whole group is participating in the learning process. You know, we've kind of talked on a few of these around, you know, does anyone else know how we should start this? Can anybody explain this? Really directing those questions to the whole group, and encouraging the students to be the ones that are doing the work and supporting one another. Now, I went through that relatively quickly, and like I said, it's not a linear step 1, step 2, step 3, but more of a holistic concept or model as to how to facilitate a group session. I'm curious, before we move on to kind of those collaborative learning strategies, of the group acronym, where do you all see students being challenged or tutors being challenged in the facilitation of a group session? And I believe we have a poll
Yes,
to allow you all to respond to that.
I will go ahead. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and launch that. But we had one question that I think is a little time sensitive. Cassandra asks if you could clarify the Socratic method.
Oh, great. Yes, thank you so much for asking that question. So the Socratic method is the process of using questioning techniques to guide students through a critical thinking process. So it is one of the things that we train our tutors on. We do a completely separate session on Socratic method, but utilizing questioning techniques to first reframe or clarify what question they're working through, identifying knowledge gaps for students, helping them to progressively make a plan of how to solve that problem, all through the use of questions and guiding strategies. There's lots of research and additional information out there about the Socratic method, but it is a great strategy to utilize in the learning process.
Awesome. And so for those of you taking the poll, it looks like we have about 40% voted so far. This is multiple options available, so you can select as many of the options as you would like. And we're at about 50% voted. So Christie, just let me know when you'd like me to close that up.
Okay, we'll give everybody just a couple more seconds.
All right.
And it's looking like a pretty good distribution across all the different elements.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like things might be slowing down a little bit, so why don't we go ahead and close it?
All right. And let me go and share the results so everyone can see. And again, this was you could select multiple options. 5% greet and gather, so that was the lowest one by a lot. 24% restructuring the environment, 44% establish outcomes, 50% understand strengths and weaknesses, and 38% use of probing questions.
Yeah, that's. Thank you so much for doing that. Are we back on the presentation? We can see everything?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, I think your all's perceptions on where do we see tutors challenged by the model, by implementing group tutoring, are pretty much what tutors also say that they feel challenged by or anticipate being challenged by. As the director for tutoring and our leadership team that observes tutoring, the most common challenges we see our tutors struggling with is, number one, just initiating the group tutoring. Because of the drop-in nature of our center, they might start with 1 or 2 students, and then they get a third, a fourth, and all of a sudden they look up and there's like 8 students there, and they're like, where did they all come from? And now they're all over the place and I'm not organized in any way. And so we really talk a lot about having a level of situational awareness so that they can maintain some level of organization control over their learning environment. And while yes, that initial welcome is so basic, and tutors really, they don't struggle with being friendly and welcoming really at all. It's when they start in on a tutoring session and they just have blinders up and don't see the other individuals coming in. So initiating that group tutoring session, once they can get everybody on the same page, they're cruising. But that's a big place of feedback and encouragement that we have to give our tutors for improvement. The other one, I think you all hit with that, establishing outcomes and understanding strengths and weaknesses. As those groups get smaller, or even those really large groups, tutors sometimes struggle to adapt. They forget sometimes that 2 students can be a group. How can you intentionally ensure that those two individuals are working together collaboratively? And while the tutor probably honestly does have time that they can float back and forth between two students, there's some missed opportunities if we're not intentionally structuring that session so that they work together. On the flip side, really large groups, which we absolutely see around exam times, they can easily start defaulting to, okay, I'm not asking any more questions. I'm just going to put a practice problem up here and I'll walk everybody through it. And so we have to kind of back them up and remind them, you know, the value of this process is in asking those intentional questions and getting them to talk through their thought process and how do you go about solving this problem. They're so worried about the time constraint and how many people are looking at them that the tutor loses some of those probing question strategies. And the final thing is, you know, when you have a group, it is challenging to ensure everybody in that group really is ready to move on, that they truly do have a good understanding of whatever that concept is or whatever that practice problem is. And so we work with that. That is the thing, a learned strategy. Many tutors have to practice and come up with what are their best ways for checking for understanding with a group of students. And there's lots of different ways to do that, from doing another practice problem to having somebody teach it to the person next to them. There's lots of different things that we encourage tutors to do, but that is a space that we often see tutors struggling a little bit. So when we think about challenges in the group session, one of the big things that even though they have that model, they have to practice some of these facilitation strategies. And so in training, we introduce 2 foundational collaborative learning strategies. And if anybody has any experience with supplemental instruction, these will probably look pretty familiar to you. But the first thing that we train our tutors around is wait time. This is simply the time between when a tutor asks a question and the next thing that happens. And there's really, we have to give students the time to process, to think, to reflect. And when we think about wait time, there's really 2 parts to wait time. The first one is, if a tutor asks a question, how much time, giving a pause, some time for the whole group to reflect and come up with a response. I think we've all seen the tutor do the ask a question and immediately answer their own question. We really, really work to discourage that, and giving some time, even awkward silence, for students to reflect and respond. But then the second part of wait time is, after a tutor gets one response, waiting again, because often, I think you guys hit on this around the why are groups valuable in a learning environment. Often students will elaborate, or they'll maybe catch something, a little bit of flawed logic somewhere or a wrong step, and they'll add on or they'll correct something. And so simply by the tutor remaining quiet for a little bit longer, they're going to deepen those responses, deepen that knowledge for the whole group. And truly, wait time 2 is very challenging for many tutors, because they want, especially if a student got it right, they want to give that positive affirmation right afterwards, like, great job, you got it. But just taking like 15 seconds to take a breath and letting the group continue the conversation really adds a level of knowledge gain for that group and how they think critically through information. The second strategy that we train tutors on and talk about are redirecting questions. And this is really geared at the idea of the tutor does not need to be the sole bearer of knowledge. You know, yes, they are in a position of power, they're the tutor, they're facilitating the session, but they're not the only ones with expertise in that group and whatever the content is. And so really reinforcing this idea of the students, you too can answer your own questions. And so instead of always being the first person to fill a knowledge gap or direct them in some way, we encourage tutors to redirect students to either others in the group or a resource that they may have. So, you know, if a student asks, what is blank, the tutor wouldn't immediately give them the answer. They would say something like, that's a great question. Does anybody here know what blank is? Or, great question, let's all go try to find that in our notes really quickly and then come back together in a couple minutes. Anything like this that redirects students to not rely solely on the tutor to fill in a knowledge gap or explain something, encourages those positive learning and study strategies. As tutors get more proficient with group tutoring, we also do a second training that includes some more advanced collaborative strategies. Typically, we encourage or work with tutors on doing these things in those really large group settings around exam review times. And the two that we've found the most success with, again, will probably look familiar for anybody that's worked with supplemental instruction, but structured problem solving, where in a large group, you can start with, let's just review quickly, how do we solve this problem? What are kind of the key steps? And then in smaller groups, maybe in pairs, providing a practice problem on the board that these small groups have to work through, and then bringing that group back together again. This works great in a large group setting or exam review setting, but it really does take an advanced tutor or an experienced tutor to have that confidence in how to facilitate, because there's a lot more facilitation skills involved with setting this up. So there's a little bit of a quote around how you might see that work on the tutoring floor. The other collaborative strategy is really having an assigned discussion leader. And this is simply the tutor identifying somebody within the group is going to help keep everybody on track. So that allows the tutor to float around and check in with people. And an assigned discussion leader can be very informal, where it's just like, hey, Jimmy, will you be responsible for ensuring you capture all the notes from your discussion? It could be more formal, where the tutor is going to identify somebody, okay, once you and your partner finish this practice problem, I want you to come up to the board and solve it for everybody. Both work really well in tandem, especially with those large groups, to make it feel a little bit smaller. How can we make those big groups feel a lot smaller? So when we think about how do we put all this together, whether it's the group acronym, the model of group tutoring, and combining that with some of these collaborative learning strategies, we try to make our training sessions as engaging as possible. And so we do a hybrid training session. We will have our tutors do online modules that are very content heavy. What are the things that they just need to remember, they need to recall? And so there's a PowerPoint that they go through similar to this with the group acronym. What is it? Why is it important? And then when they come in person, we try to do more engaging activities for them to start applying that information, putting it into practice. Some of the things that we really enjoy doing in our training sessions is a gallery walk, and it works great for something with an acronym, because we can put a big G, big R around the room, and then we prompt them to do very similar things to what I showed you all today. What are things you would literally say when you're greeting and gathering someone? What would you do to establish the outcome? And they'll walk in small groups around and contribute to all of those different pieces, and then bring it back together as a large group. Obviously, we love role playing to practice some of those facilitation or those collaborative learning strategies. They need to be able to practice that in a small group. You know, redirecting questions sounds so easy, wait time sounds so easy, until you're sitting in a group and you have to be silent. So finding ways to role play those collaborative learning strategies. And so much of the group tutoring model revolves around practicing what you want to say. How are you going to encourage students to do the behaviors you want for a productive group tutoring session? What are you going to say? What are you going to do to get that result? And so we will do an incomplete outline, or have them write a script of, how am I going to facilitate? What am I going to say to identify the discussion leader? And they literally have to write it out and then practice and say it to somebody else. For the last piece, we've gone over a ton of information here. And so for the last little bit, I want to give you all an opportunity to take just 1 minute and reflect on this question. You do not have to write it into the question response, but if you would like to, I would definitely encourage you to. But I'm curious for you all to write down, how can you transfer a piece or the whole group tutoring model, or pick a collaborative learning strategy from today, and how do you anticipate being able to transfer at least one thing into your learning center? And we're going to give everybody a minute to reflect on that. You can definitely just jot down notes to yourself, make yourself a really quick short-term goal. And if anybody's willing to volunteer their plan or their thing that they're going to do for their learning center, please also share that in the chat. And we'll give everybody a minute. I'll start my timer even.
We're getting some responses if you'd like me to read some of them.
Great. I'm so glad some people felt comfortable sharing. So yes, Rachel, what do we got?
So we're seeing more focus on collaborative learning strategies, having a memorable acronym for tutors to remember tutoring concepts, slowing down when asking students questions. This is I'm trying to think how to implement this in a very small school where we have previously only done one-on-one tutoring. Only one-on-one tutoring, but we know where the high need courses are, so we can start with one or two of those. And this person says, I'm going to make this topic of my all staff meeting before the fall semester begins. We've tried group tutoring organically, but never structured or intentional, so I think this will work well for us. Create focused topic sessions that align with a specific course's lesson plans. We could deal with one or two of the group processes to each of our training sessions, including having tutors journal about using the model elements and noting outcomes. We just got smart boards for our tutoring center. I'm going to have them set the timer so that they won't give the answer until the timer goes off. This will be done during exam reviews. I need a model for brand new tutors who will be working with students in a math academy this summer. I think this model will work with the open tutoring center they will be working in. Let's see, this one's a question, so we're gonna save that for the end. Role playing with tutors as students. I tutor writing, which lends itself mostly to individual sessions. What we have adopted is going to our classroom with the entire class. Sorry, and I'm not able to read the second half of that. Getting students to act out the script of organizing students into groups. Many of our tutors are introverts. That was my experience while working in a tutoring center. So getting them to practice this is great prep, embedding in specific classes. And that seems like all we've got so far. The rest are just questions that we're gonna flag and get to at the end.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for those that were willing to share their kind of action steps with us. I think those are fantastic action steps. And much like we talked about earlier, there are absolutely times that a one-on-one tutoring session is going to be beneficial. And while ours is 100% drop-in, many centers have a blend of one-on-one appointment based and then certain hours that they know are the busiest peak hours, or the courses that they know always have so much need. I mean, calculus is hard. Organic chemistry is hard. Students need more time to be practicing some of those concepts. So whatever those courses are for you, those times that are for you, having some drop-in hours to experiment with group tutoring can be a really positive way of figuring out what works well on your campus. There are certain courses on our campus that group tutoring lends itself very easily to, because general chemistry, no matter what section they're in, they're all doing the same thing. They all have a shared homework platform. So, tutors can kind of anticipate, okay, this week I'm going to see students all asking me questions around homework number 7. And so it can be easy to group them in that way. They're all working on the same thing. But then there's absolutely courses like Psych 100 for us right now. Even though it's a shared curriculum, the faculty teach it in a different order, different sequence, and those tutors have to work a lot harder to intentionally group students and have them work together because they're just doing different things at different part of the semester. So group tutoring can lend itself very easily to some courses, and it might be a bigger challenge and might involve more coaching around for other courses and other tutors. We're excited, some great resources for you all, and really thank you so much for coming. And I think you know, if you have other individual questions, want to float some ideas, bounce ideas off of me, and I always love hearing from people about what they have going on in their centers. So please feel free to reach out anytime. We'd love to connect with anybody about this topic or other topics. Yeah, I understand we do have some questions. So Rachel, is it best to leave the PowerPoint on, or would you like me to stop sharing for questions?
No, you can keep it on for questions.
Okay.
All right, so our first one, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, we did just have somebody ask if you could go back to the works cited.
Oh, sure.
So,
yes.
Okay, and then the first question here is, what if a student prefers one-on-one tutoring for privacy and to minimize embarrassment?
Yes, and you know, we work hard. That's such a great question. We work really hard to level set expectations for both the student coming into tutoring and vice versa, how we talk about the service and what the student's hoping to get from the service. To hopefully minimize some of that from the jump, that they expect and see the benefit of working with others. But truly, that's not everybody. And so, you know, some strategies that tutors have utilized is, you know, when they identify a student is, you know, kind of withdrawing from the group, they're not as willing to engage with the group for whatever reason that is, that they try to use some of those discussion leader strategies, get the main group working on something collectively so that they can then spend a little more time with that individual that maybe needs a little more attention. But at the end of the day, you know, really trying to have a conversation with the student around what's going on, what else could they maybe get referred to as additional resources. It's not gonna always be perfect for everybody, but encouraging those individuals that are a little more resistant to the group tutoring to still engage with it. What are small ways they can bring them into the group? They may not want them, the tutor may not ask them to be the discussion leader, but maybe they'll work into that if they can get them to come back a couple times. So finding little ways to start incorporating them into the group.
All right, and then, yeah, and the next question, I think this person is looking for some clarification that students, she said in her center, but I think she meant in yours, students drop in at any time, and are the tutors expected to figure out what each student is working on? And then a follow-up to that from the same person, are group sessions scheduled or are they focused on a specific course or subject?
Great questions. So for the study for our center, they are course-based. So our tutors are hired to support certain courses. So for example, elementary calculus is Math 123 for us. We hire Math 123 tutors. That's the course that they support. Similar for general chemistry. We have a few exceptions. Our business tutors may support a couple of different accounting courses, but generally it's course specific. But then when that tutor is available or on shift, that course is available and it's 100% drop-in. Students do not make appointments or schedule in any way for those group sessions, and there is no minimum or maximum. Some students will see how many students are there and they will self-select to come back at a different time, but there is no minimum or maximum. If there's a tutor here they are expected to adapt to whatever group size they end up getting. Did I address all the parts of that question?
I think so. Students dropping in at any time, tutors have to figure out what the student is working on and if they are scheduled and focused on a specific course or subject. So that was all the parts of that question. And let me find the next one here. How do your tutors manage group tutoring if students have different professors for the same course? This is something that I know a lot of our clients with Accudemia struggle with as well.
Yes. Yes. So I'll kind of give two different examples because again, one of the reasons that group tutoring works really well for us, and I imagine there's some courses for you all that this is also true, general chemistry and almost all of our math courses, they're heavily coordinated. So even though student A is in section 1 and student B is in section 7 and they have different instructors, they're working on, more or less, they are working on the same concepts. They're going in the same order. They have the same homework platform with very similar problems, which inherently does lend itself to function well with a group tutoring environment. The tutor can anticipate and knows, it doesn't matter what section students are in, they're all working on blank concept this week, and I can pair them together, match them together very easily. And if we start on problem 5 and circle back to problem 1, everybody's gonna generally get what they need out of the tutoring session. At the same time, we absolutely have courses like our business courses, psychology, statistics, that while they have shared learning outcomes, they're not nearly as heavily coordinated. And it does make it a more challenging for the tutor to group students effectively and ensure everybody's needs are getting met. But things that we encourage or see successful tutors doing in those situations, when they greet and gather, part of that is not like, what did you come in for? They also start a conversation around, oh, who's your instructor? What are you working on right now? And they can still pair people together knowing more about what are you working on, what have you already done. Many of those courses we also see students coming back regularly, so tutors get to know their students and can kind of tell, oh, hey, you worked on concept A last week, and this person with this instructor, that's what they're doing this week. I know you were doing pretty well with that. Why don't you sit next to them and you guys can talk about concept A. It is not as fluid or as easy, but they still find ways to connect those two students together and have them talk and discuss together. Making large groups smaller is another great way of, identifying, oh, you're in section 1, so is Billy. Make sure to put that student right next to Billy because we know they have the same instructor and I can work with that small group within this bigger group.
All right, and our next question is, can you say more about how this method might be adapted to appointment-based learning or writing centers?
Yeah, I even wrote down whoever left the comment about writing centers because yeah, it's not as streamlined of a crossover, but for appointment-based, it's a much probably a little bit more like SI, and so having the group session, whatever size you want it to be, kind of 5 to 7 is a real good size small group discussion, but you can make it as big as you want, and then the tutor just needs to be prepared for, I'm going to break that group of 20 into 3 small pods. So thinking about the space you have available is a big part of maximum group size. But scheduled group tutoring, just having those time slots available and having whatever you want your maximum to be based on the space that you have, and allowing students to book based off of what course they're covering is very simple, very basic. depending upon what your scheduling platform is that you're using, can make it easier or harder to make that easy for students to navigate. I've also seen lots of institutions that do basically a regular weekly study group, kind of like an accountability piece. Like every Monday at 6, I come in and I see the same group of students, and this is scheduled for me with the same tutor. Basically, we made your study group for you, and lots of schools have success with a similar model like that. Writing centers, thinking of it like a group project, or knowing kind of the writing process and where students are in the writing process might be a really good way to utilize group tutoring. Having some sort of group tutoring session around what does it look like to outline your paper, what does it look like to research for whatever the paper, and starting with some of those writing processes. And not necessarily so much tutors going to look at your product and kind of identify next steps or walk through where things are unclear, but more the writing cycle for group tutoring, so that students can come in and apply what they're learning in the group session to their individual assignment. But I'm very open to hear from other people how they could envision applying group tutoring into a writing center, because I would say from what I've seen, that is far more rare. It is not as common to see group tutoring in writing centers.
That has also been my experience working with both learning centers and writing centers. We are getting somebody asking if you could post your contact info. I don't remember if that was on the final slide, but and just to let everyone know, we are going to be perfect. We are going to be sending out the slides with the recording, and then if you're watching this back on YouTube, there should be a link to the slides in the description as well. Let's see. Next one here. Oh, I'm wondering how the tutoring scheduling would work. How can we ensure coverage for needed courses without having blocks of time without students?
Yes, so basically I would recommend using whatever data you have currently available to you. So that can be, if you're currently doing scheduled one-on-one, what do you see the most demand for, and what time blocks do you see students requesting or looking for most frequently? That's probably a pretty good indication of when are students available, what courses are they looking for tutoring in, that you may want to think about trying some drop-in tutoring hours or for group sessions at those timeframes. We personally have several years worth of traffic data that we go back and look at, so that we can tell on average how many students are coming each hour of the day for each course, and so we can make some very informed decisions about, if we're averaging 8 students at this hour, we're going to have 2 tutors for that course. It's not a perfect science, and since it's drop-in, there absolutely are times when we have a tutor on the schedule and they don't see anybody. And in those situations, we kind of have like a task list or projects or things that we're encouraging tutors to do, as well as we tell them that if they do not have anybody in their section, that our expectation is that they're role modeling good academic behaviors and working on their homework or reading their whatever for their course. And so it's not perfect. There will be times when you have drop-in hours and people do not come for whatever that course is. But using the data that you have to make the most informed decisions that you possibly can. We see enough of a balance that we can rationalize, we can justify those couple hours on that one week when it was bad weather and no one came. Well, then they made up for it the next day when it was nice and 10 people came.
Okay, so the question for Christie was, do you have front desk staff that help encourage students together for group tutoring, or is it all in the tutors?
Oh, that's a great question. Our current staffing and layout, we do have front desk staff. Their primary responsibilities are involved with that customer service, disarming, and then data collection, so getting them checked in for the correct thing. And our front desk does help students navigate the space in some way, but truly, it's really mostly on the tutor for when a student enters their space or their table for their course. It is really them structuring that environment and making sure students are sitting where they want them to be sitting, moving things around. The other key piece of our current structure in the tutoring center, we do have a student leadership position called a student program coordinator, and that's really our on-duty supervisor. That individual is monitoring the whole space. They're observing tutoring sessions and taking notes and offering feedback, and they're there to offer backup and support. So if a tutor has a very large group and they need to expand into another section, that student program coordinator is going to help make that happen. They're going to make sure they have enough whiteboards and enough markers and enough chairs, and they're monitoring the whole floor to ensure that things are running smoothly and that tutors have that additional layer of support and can focus on tutoring. And the front desk and our student program coordinators really play a very big support role for our tutoring center as a whole.
All right, great. Let's see. If you have, the next question is, if you have embedded tutors in a course, or if you have writers all taking an intro class, this is a suggestion about writing centers. You can support your tutors to discuss an aspect of an essay like a thesis or organization or etc. So that was one suggestion we got there. And then this next question is, have you seen much benefit in using group tutoring for English?
We do not currently offer drop-in tutoring for any English courses. So this is all anecdotal and speculative, but I would have to guess that maybe a supplemental instruction model might work well for an English course, much to what the suggestion right before this hints at, that having a student that's kind of following along with the course and designing active learning activities and strategies to facilitate those group sessions may overlay with the curriculum or things that students are doing in an English course that still allows for that group collaborative learning piece. But in my experience, courses that benefit from repetition, have regular homeworks, that need some of those practice problems in order to really be able to apply a concept, they tend to lend themselves the best to a drop-in group tutoring model, and courses that are composition or writing heavy may work better with a supplemental instruction model or even an embedded tutoring model, which is very similar to SI.
All right. The next question is, how do you apply the group model in online group study sessions or drop-in tutoring?
Great question, and thank you, COVID, for giving us an opportunity to experiment with this. So similar to in-person, very similar strategies for ensuring that you're greeting everybody as they come in and making sure that they know who else is in the group and what you're working on, what are the outcomes. The big things that we found through experiment and trial and error, that restructuring the environment and breaking a large group into a smaller group are much harder for tutors to effectively manage in a virtual environment. There's some layer of technology, like digital fluency, that they have to have in order to navigate that digital space, and the grouping and that discussion that happens when you're physically sitting next to somebody versus in a box next to somebody online. It's different, and tutors really struggle to get discussion going sometimes in that virtual environment. So in our experience, for tutors to be to have success in a group online tutoring session, they really had to come in with a plan as to how am I going to facilitate this group. I'm going to use some of those advanced collaborative learning strategies. I'm going to have a discussion. We're going to build the steps, and I have maybe a Google Doc already formatted where I can put those notes in there and they can see them. And they really had to enter the space with a pretty good outline of what they wanted to do with the group, which was a bigger ask than what we generally ask of many of our tutors. So, you know, we kind of figured out if we want to continue doing group online services, we would have to do a different training, and we needed a better platform to do it on, which actually we used to use GoBoard, and GoBoard's not a thing anymore. So we're in the market for a new group tutoring or virtual group tutoring space. So we had to enhance our training and do a separate training just for how to do this effectively online. It was surprisingly hard. You can't just lift what we did in person and put it into a digital platform.
Alrighty, and the next question is, do you have any advice for group sessions where students are interested in being there?
How to balance or incorporate students that are resistant or not excited about being in a group learning environment? Was that basically the question?
Yes.
Okay, great. It is challenging. So if we all can just accept that is hard and that is a challenging situation. One of the things that we do, we have a consistent training session with our tutors is just challenging situations. And one of them is always basically this scenario. You have an individual that's either disruptive to the group learning environment or very resistant to the group learning environment. And having tutors kind of practice, what would I say, what do I do, how would I handle this, it is a great way for them to at least start thinking about, this isn't always going to go perfectly, and I should have some ideas in my back pocket of how I can pivot. Things that we encourage tutors to think about is, you know, can I make the group smaller? Sometimes if it's a pair or a group of 3, students are not as resistant to engage with a small group as they might be hesitant or nervous to engage with a large group. So can you make it smaller and more intimate in some way, that they feel like they're actually having a conversation one-on-one with somebody? Then being really intentional about how much time can the tutor spend with everybody, and level setting that expectation. Having the tutor literally say, I'm going to work with this group and then I'm going to float around to this group. I'm going to get to you in just a minute. While I'm not with you, here's what I want you to do, can help students feel like I'm still being productive. Because generally we find when students get the most frustrated with the group environment, it's when they feel like their needs are not being met or they're being ignored in some way. And if the tutor can find a way to engage them and have them working on something productive, that often lessens that hesitation or that sense of, I'm not getting my needs met. And kind of the last thing that we talk to tutors about is, if you've tried to pivot and kind of reconnect and you've done your best to lessen this disturbance, you can always go to the student program coordinator. That's that on-duty supervisor, and having that additional person kind of help you navigate that challenging situation. Really it might just be realigning expectations about what does it look like and mean to be part of this learning environment in this group. Yeah, hopefully that answered that question.
I think so. And this one should be a nice short one. How long are the drop-in sessions typically?
So there is no minimum or maximum. Students could literally come at 2 and stay until 10 if they wanted to. When we look at our traffic data, I would say most students typically build it into their study habits, and so they're probably staying an hour, maybe 2. But as we kind of know, and even research tells us, after about 50 minutes, it's really hard to stay focused on something, and you kind of lose steam and they need to take a break. And so I would say the majority of students, when they drop in, it's probably about an hour to an hour and a half before they kind of pack up and maybe come back the next day or something.
All right, and the next question is, can you elaborate on the advanced collaborative strategies you teach the more experienced tutors?
Really, there's probably no right or wrong advanced collaborative learning strategies. There's way more out there that would work great for a group learning environment. For the two that we selected to train our tutors in, the structured problem solving, the basic facilitation strategy is the tutor will introduce, here's all the concepts on this homework or this exam. Let's focus in on, they'll pick one concept. Okay, here's a practice problem for that. What are the things we need to know? What's kind of step one, step two, step three? They'll walk the whole group through a discussion around how do we, in theory, solve a problem like this? What are some key things we need to know? What are the steps involved? And then they'll give the students a different practice problem and either pair them up or put them in a group of three, something small, so that they can work on that practice problem independently, have some processing time. I say independently, but really in a group. But they'll have time to process and really think deeply about that practice problem. And the tutor will then kind of float around and check in with people, make sure they're staying on task, answer little questions, clarify little things. If they notice the whole group is struggling with something, they might bring them back together as a whole group. But they'll then use that kind of discussion lead strategy to have somebody come up and walk through the steps of solving that problem. Or maybe you could have someone in each pair do step one, step two, step three. It can vary depending upon what they're working on, but it really looks and feels like a way to make a large group function much smaller and keep everybody on task and being able to ensure they're actually understanding and able to apply the information that we're hoping they're able to apply or wanting them to be able to learn.
The next question is, the tutors that are assigned to a course, are they expected to only do group tutoring, or do the tutors also do individual tutoring? And if so, is that also drop-in?
It's 100% drop-in. So we talk to our tutors about, how do you work with one student versus two versus bigger groups. So no 2 days look the same for tutors, really. It's a little predictable upon the season we're in. As we get closer to exams, group sizes tend to get bigger. Right after an exam, usually a little smaller. Our tutors kind of have a sense of when's that really hard homework coming. Group sizes might get bigger, but it's 100% drop-in. So tutors might only get one person and they work one-on-one with that student until somebody else drops in, and now they have to welcome that individual into that session to figure out what they're working on or have them join with what the individual the student that's already there is working on. And tutors, we give them the model, we give them the skills, and we try to provide them with a lot of different tools and strategies to apply. But tutors have to figure out the authentic way that they're going to implement that on the tutoring floor. And inevitably, they have to adapt it and flex it depending upon who they're tutoring. So even though we encourage them, 2 people are a group, get them to work together, there's absolutely effective tutoring sessions where the tutor spends time with one, and then they float to the next one, and then they float back to the next one. And as long as the students are getting what they need out of that tutoring session, and the tutors using good probing questions and good scaffolding techniques, there is nothing wrong with that. We trust our tutors to flex and adapt these tools and these strategies as they need to in order to successfully work with students.
All right, and then the next question is, are the students aware that they will not be getting one-on-one assistance when they come to your center?
That's such a great question. we work very hard in how we describe tutoring to emphasize the group aspect of it, as well as the peer and the friend. And really build up that this is a good thing. It's a positive to be in a study group. That really helps us level set and align those expectations for students, but it is not 100%. There are absolutely students that come into our center and are upset that they are not going to get one-on-one attention. And that's something that we kind of coach our tutors. That's a challenging situation. How do you pivot and adapt to, still make that a positive experience for the student? And they have to really role model or show them, yeah, it's good, it's normal, it's natural, it's positive to work with other people in your class and with other students. The tutor's not the only one with knowledge that can be shared and gained, but it's not 100%. And we also have, when they check out, they can rate their session, and hands down, 98% of our feedback is positive, but that 2%, a lot of it is I didn't get the one-on-one attention that I wanted, and that clearly means there's still work for us to do around how we talk about the service and how we explain it to students so that we can better align with what they're expecting when they walk in the door.
And then this was another response to the question about writing centers. Our writing center group sessions were topic-driven workshops, but they weren't as popular as individual appointments. And then this next question, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer. It's how much do you pay your tutors?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. We start our tutors at $12 an hour. That was a decision driven by the unit that we report through, that any student employee within that unit, that was going to be the starting wage. And that's pretty normal across UK. There are also other tutoring centers, that tutors that don't work for us, that they also start at $12 an hour. And we have a raise system as well. So if they earn CRLA certification, if they meet certain job requirements or score a certain level on their performance evaluation, there's opportunities for them to earn raises as they progress and continue to tutor.
All right. We have a few more questions. I know we're coming to the towards the end of our time. Let me just get to those right here. I was looking to see if we'd had any more responses here. What marketing or outreach efforts have you used to increase attendance in a group tutoring session for a course that you have seen high use in the past but has decreased in the past couple of semesters?
That's a great question. So probably when we notice things like that, I work really hard to keep relationships and communication with the course coordinators and the instructors for the courses. It changes all the time, but as much as possible, who do I know in the department? And I'll reach out to them and see what, if anything, may have changed with the course. I know recently our college algebra, we've seen a very large decrease in attendance, but and they warned us about this too, but they restructured the course and they're doing some really great things to allow students to be more successful in the course. They don't do exams anymore. They do multiple quizzes, and students have multiple attempts on those quizzes to demonstrate competency. So because they made some really smart, creative changes within that course, students just aren't as motivated or needing tutoring services as much as they used to for that course. So I would say the number one thing is having that connection with the instructors or the department that course is based out of, so you have a sense of what's happening on the ground. How are we seeing that in foot traffic for tutoring? As far as marketing though, some standard things that we typically do, we do class presentations for every course that we support, where we send a tutor to talk about the service. We have key touch points with the instructor throughout the semester that we send them something for their syllabus or a PowerPoint slide to put up at their next class or post on we use Canvas, but whatever their learning platform is. We have a key touch point at midterms that we send a communication to students enrolled in the course about, hey, no matter how you did on midterms, you can keep doing great, or it's okay, we got you, we can help you get that grade you're looking for. So there's some key communication points that we directly send someone to the class or send information to the faculty of the class to ensure that students are getting reminded about attending and utilizing the free resources.
And then this next question, have your center numbers taken a hit since the pandemic, and have you adjusted your messaging?
That's a great question. Yes, COVID had a big effect on how students access services. We are still not back to numbers that we were seeing pre-COVID, but we're slowly moving up, slowly seeing more and more students looking for and accessing tutoring services and more desiring it in person and looking for that group experience that they want. They miss that, they want that back. I think we've kind of learned that students will find the resource if they go looking. There is definitely a group of students that I think we haven't quite reached because they either have not self-identified that's a thing I should try or do, or they have some sort of narrative in their head of, I'm not supposed to need help and I'm supposed to be able to do this on my own. And so when we think about how we have changed our messaging, we work very closely with our coaching team, which conveniently is also located in our department. But our coaching team sees a ton of students one-on-one and through group that those students can often say, something is not going well, I'm just not sure what, and I don't know what to change, I don't know what to do. And if our coaches are more apt to make a referral of, here's something you can try for that course, students are pretty apt to give it a try then, that somebody referred them, somebody said this is a thing that might be good for you, check it out. And so we've tried to really emphasize or connect better with kind of those secondary audiences. You know, we still put information out towards students, but those secondary audiences of our coaches, advisors, parents, who might recommend a student try this service, and we've upped how we communicate our message to those groups with the intention of, we're pretty confident they're going to tell their student to do this or to try this service.
And I did warn you we might get a lot of questions here. I'm seeing 4 more so far. Do you have time for to take the rest of these, or do we have a hard stop?
We'll try to squeeze them in, so we can go a few more minutes.
All right. Do you ever have group drop-in hours that are not tied to a specific course where the tutor may encounter students from multiple classes in a discipline, such as a math tutor handling algebra, trig, calculus, stats, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we do not currently do that. We have tried drop-in coaching before, which it would not be course or content specific, it would be more study strategy and skills specific. We didn't get a great response from that. Something that we're trying now is accountability groups. So it's really intended to just be a time like, hey, someone's expecting you to be here at this time and you're going to study, so come. And the leaders for those groups, they have a little bit of study strategies that they insert, and they do a lot of that disarming, welcoming. They send a lot of communications via email and text to encourage students to stay with these good habits. But it's not directly linked with tutoring. It has no direct content support as far as what are students doing in the classroom. It's much more time management and study skill kind of thing. And we've been seeing a little more success with that. In my experience, it is more rare to find a tutor that has the ability to switch gears really quickly from organic to general chemistry or from algebra to calculus. So some of those general ones are challenging for students or for tutors to switch and stay up on that much content, but they absolutely exist. Don't get me wrong. There are some really great math majors that you could put anybody in any math course in front of, and they would be able to assist them. in my experience, those tutors are harder to find. And so we haven't had a lot of success with kind of those general topic drop-in sessions.
And then that's the next question. Do you have any response to the issue of neurodivergent students not being able to focus in a busy or loud environment, and how do you deal with noise levels?
Yes, that is a fantastic question, and it is a thing that is literally on our minds every single day. How do we better support neurodivergent students that need accommodations of some sort? And I don't have all the answers for that. The unfortunate reality that we live in, I shouldn't say unfortunate, but we haven't been able to design our own spaces and be really intentional with how we build the learning center's environment. We get hand-me-down spaces and we get thrown in the basement corner where the university can put us. And so we have to adapt and mold what we have available to us to meet as many student needs as possible. We absolutely do training for our tutors around students with disabilities, neurodivergency, what are things you can recognize, how do you adapt your tutoring session to meet those students where they are. You know, if we have students that have accommodations, we'll work with them to find some sort of private tutoring situation. And our Disability Resource Center also has tutors on their staff that if a student comes to us and says this is what's going on, that's a referral that we would make for them to get them the resource that they need, but is absolutely not a perfect system and is something that we are constantly bringing up about how can we do this better.
All right, and last two questions. How many tutors do you have per course, and how many scheduled at the same time for the same course? That's from one person. Then we have one more question after that.
Yeah, that's a great question. It varies widely. We know that general chemistry, physics, calculus, and kind of our elementary calculus are our busiest courses. They have the most students enrolled in them. They have historically over years and years had the most demand for them. Those courses also have something that UK calls a common hour exam. So it doesn't matter what section you're in, you always take your exam on the same day at the same time, which inherently drives traffic to increase all at the same time. So for those courses, we often do have what we call an overlap shift where maybe one tutor opens and there's 2 or 3 tutors at kind of our peak hours between 4 and 8, and then maybe only one tutor closes. But we base all of that off of historic traffic patterns. What do we see students doing over multiple fall semesters that kind of allows us to predict what we think they're going to do this next fall semester? We probably in our center have anywhere from 8 to 12 tutors across all the courses that we're supporting. Yeah, I think I answered all the pieces of that question.
Yep. And then the next question, final question we have so far, I just double checked. So we're going to call it after this because I know Christie has to go. I'm sorry, I don't think this has been answered. The person apologized if it has been asked, but are these sessions always peer tutoring?
Yes, it's always peer tutoring, and we specifically look for when we're hiring students that have taken the course here at UK, if at all possible. There's a lot of benefit if they know the structure of the course, they know the homework platform, and then we really look hard that they've taken the specific course that they're tutoring. So calculus is probably a pretty good example of there's a Calc 1 and Calc 2. Our tutors should need to have taken both courses if at all possible, and not necessarily come in with like AP credit or something, although we absolutely do hire tutors that come in with credit from somewhere else. We just have found that for peers and students coming in, they ask a lot of questions about the homework platform and where's this classroom building and what's this, who would you take for this class? And tutors that have done some of those things here are often better positioned to support students, not just with their calculus, but also the other things that go along with being a successful student. But We do not hire TAs to tutor, and we do not, or graduate students, and we don't hire like the public or other faculty, or it's all undergraduate students.
All right. It looks like that was the last question.
Yay.
So thank you so much for staying. And I know we still have some folks in here who didn't have to leave quite yet. So for everyone still joining us, as a reminder, if you could go ahead and take that survey that you are going to be redirected to when you leave. If you are interested in the free trial of sorry, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. If you are interested in that free trial of Accudemia, you can email me at rachelc@engineerica.com. And of course, if you're interested in signing up for our live conference that's going to happen in October, I will paste that link in the chat one more time there. And as a reminder, we are going to be including the slides as well as some additional information that Christie has provided. And I know there was a request for some information from the audience regarding different ideas that I will try to compile into a PDF as well. But thank you everybody for joining us today. This was a fantastic session. Thank you so much, Christie. Thank you. Had a great time answering all your questions, seeing all those in there, and great participation today. Great information, and we hope to see you at the next Engineerica keynote session. Thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.